So congratulations on the new album, Omega. It just came out
Thanks.
last weekend, right? Last Friday?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's Friday.
And it's your first album. It's on Blue Note, and that's all pretty exciting. So how are you feeling about it a few days after the fact?
Man, it feels good. I mean, I've been sitting on it for maybe a year now. We recorded it January 2019. So
right.
For me, it's been kind of simmering in the ether of my head for for a while. But it's a real relief that the world gets to hear it at this point.
Well, yeah, it seems the fact that you recorded it over a year ago and it's out now, and with all the stuff that's happening and the subject matter that inspired this music, you've got to be. How does that make you feel?
Man, I actually, so going into it, I had an initial idea of what kind of I was building the record around, and then once it got closer to a release date, everything was kind of going on in America with all the police brutality and all that stuff, and at first I was kind of nervous about releasing it during this time because I was like, man, it doesn't really I didn't feel like releasing a record was the appropriate response for what was going on. You know what I mean? It's like it seemed a little selfish to me in a way, and then it kind of got me thinking that the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is an appropriate time for it, and
releasing a record is not a selfish thing. You're sharing your music with other people. I mean, that's what
true.
You're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I realized that people need this right now. That was the big. You hit the nail on the head. That's what I realized is that people need need this during this time. So
yeah. So what has the reaction been? Have you been talking to people about it? I realize you can't go out and do gigs, so it's got to be a little bit frustrating there.
Yeah, it's been great. The outpouring of love and support from the album. Especially it came out on my birthday, which was very overwhelming because it was just like I was getting like not only happy birthday messages, but then also double it with like congrats on the record. The record sounds great. Can I get some sheet music? All of these. So I mean, it's like it was definitely overwhelming, which was it was great. It was a good feeling. And I definitely believe in the music a lot. I believe in the music a whole lot. And so I do think that it has, the power to, do some good in people's ears,
Let's hope so. Yeah.
So I hope so. Yeah.
Now, I noticed from doing a little bit of reading that your kind of mentor is mentioned as Ambrose, and I'm going to mess up his last name.
Akinmusire.
Yeah, that's it. And I spoke to him just a couple months ago because he released an album on Blue Note as well. So I was curious as to what the relationship is like between the two of you, and what has he kind of brought to the table for you?
Well, Ambrose is kind of he's one of those cats. So he used to live in New York, but then he moved back to California where he's from.
Yeah.
And he's always kind of made it a point to really be involved through the interwebs in terms of staying abreast in terms of what's going on in New York and what young people are coming up and what's going on. So when I was in high school, I met him in Philadelphia, and we kind of stayed in touch. And then once I moved to New York, he was always kind of around to give me advice. And he was doing it with a lot of other people on the scene around my age.
Yeah.
And so he's always good. He's always just good about just staying abreast in terms of what's happening with the younger generations, which is
he seems like a good guy. So nice one to have on your side, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned high school, and I guess I read somewhere where you attended the Grammys when you were in high school. And I'm kind of curious about that, just because you watch the Grammys, but what's it like to go to it?
Yeah, it was fun. Actually, yeah, I went 2 years. I went my junior year, my senior year. I was in the
Ooh,
Grammy band. It was basically like a high school kind of all-star band of like all the best kids from the high schools or whatever.
cool.
And they fly them out to LA, and we get to play at the Grammy after party and some other Grammy related events that week, and then we attend the broadcast.
Sure.
And I mean it was great. I got to see not only a lot of my jazz heroes. I got to meet Wayne Shorter and Herbie and
Nice.
all those cats, Joe Lovano, Terry Lynn. But then also it was also like not real celebrities, but like they were.
Did you meet Beyonce?
Man, I didn't get to meet Beyonce, but I will say, man, I may get in trouble for this, but interesting story, man. We found out this was terrible. We found out that our ID cards for the events got us onto the main floor, right where all the celebrities sit.
Right.
And so me and one of the other saxophone players snuck down onto the floor, and like we're just walking around, and like Beyonce's around there, John Legend's down there, Lady Gaga, everybody's kind of just walking around in the space, and I get a call from the from the drummer in the band, and he says, "Hey man, like do you have the band leader's contact info? We're with the FBI right now." And I'm like, man, what's up? Like, and they're like, yeah, they caught us down on the floor. I never bolted off of the floor so fast. I got out of there. I got out of Dodge.
Well, smart move, probably.
Yeah, man, no one knows that I was down there. No one knows I was down there. I didn't get in trouble, but yeah, the FBI got them. It was rough.
Well,
it was fun. It was a real fun time.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, that's cool. So I'm curious, you being a jazz musician and even rubbing shoulders with the pop elite when you're in high school, do you feel like you're part of that, or is it separate? For what you do from what they do?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think in a lot of ways it's the same.
Yeah.
And in the obvious ways it's different. The obvious ways are, rarely am I going to be playing for, 40,000 people who solely came out to hear me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that it is. I do consider myself just in the realm of like music that's happening now. And when I talk to like my friends who don't particularly listen to jazz or only listen to me, maybe, you know what I mean? It's like my album is in the same vicinity. You know what I mean? They saved my album to their iTunes playlist just like they saved the new Cardi B album.
It is kind of the great equalizer, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's interesting how like, and it comes from like, they come to the music in a really interesting way because they're coming as just through me. They're just a friend of mine.
Right.
So they're supporting my album. You know what I mean? But it's funny how that immediately kind of catapults my music into the same spaces as, a Beyonce rap album, or, you know what I mean? Or Kendrick Lamar or something. I don't know.
Cool. But we should talk a bit more in depth about Omega, the album, because it's only been out a few days. And, the things that seem to inspire the music are what's happening all over the States and kind of all over the world at the moment with the Black Lives Matter and all the police stuff going on. So maybe you can address some of the folks down here in New Zealand about, how the music is related to those current events.
Yeah. So when so there's kind of two stories to this. The first one is when I wrote it, mostly of what I was thinking about was kind of how to create an idea of like what Black identity means audibly. You know what I mean? Like what does a Black identity sound like? And what I kind of came across was as Black people, we kind of live on two tiers of reality at the same time. We're dealing with like super horrific material, super like graphic, explicit, terrible things that are happening to us, right? But then also super hilarious things, super sublime things, super beautiful things, right?
Right.
And so when like our everyday life is dealing with both things and having to see both in conjunction with each other, you know what I mean? And so it creates like a, you know, if it's black and white, then we see in a gray scale, you know what I mean? And so I wanted to figure out how to kind of make music that audibly sounded like that sounded grotesque, but then also, you know, or sounded like abjecture, you know, but then also sounded really beautiful and super sublime, things that sound heavenly, you know, in a way, you know. And so that was kind of the genesis of the tunes we picked and how they kind of function together. And then naming the album came a little bit later. And really the idea behind it was kind of thinking about what happens at the end, you know, like what does the end mean? You know, Omega means the end. And it's like, you know, what does the end of police brutality look like? Or what does the end of, you know, prejudice look like? Or, you know, the end of racial oppression, oppressive systems, how, you know, like what does true liberation look like? You know? And so I was just trying to, and also, you know, when I think about that stuff, I guess, you know, like when you are at the end of things, they usually get worse before they get better, you know? So that was another thing. I was trying to create, you know, there are points in the record where it does sound kind of cacophonous or chaotic, you know, and so that kind of speaks to that idea too, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So you're playing with a relatively small band, bass, drums, sax, whatever, guitar. What kind of conversations did you have with your musicians before you went in, and did you talk to them about what these songs were, how they felt to you and meant to you?
Yeah. So basically, the process leading up to recording, we have been playing that music for about 2 or 3 years before we recorded it. And so basically, what we did loosely was pick like some of the best repertoire of our set. You know, just like naturally with any group, I guess. And so they had understood the individual kind of meanings of each song. And you know, we don't rehearse that much, but when we do rehearse, you know, usually they glean the most knowledge from me from either having spur of the moment conversations with me about the tunes or me sitting down and playing them. And you know, I try to make sure that either in the title or in the inherent like musical quality of the tune, there's an inherent feeling of what the meaning is, you know. And I think they realized it beautifully. I think they kind of actualized it in a way that I didn't really expect, which is great.
Now, I think it's interesting that your album is on Blue Note, and I believe Ambrose was as well. And, you know, it seems to be having a kind of resurgence of some sort. I know Don is now the head of the label, who, as an outsider, he seems like not the guy because, you know, he's like produces the Rolling Stones and stuff. So,
exactly.
You know, and I think there was probably some people thinking, this is not good. So did you have any qualms about it?
No, I mean, so two of my best friends who are not that much older than me, Joel Ross, who's a great vibraphonist. I play in his group. He recently signed to Blue Note maybe a year ago. He put out his record. And my other friend, James Francis, who's been on the label for a while, but just put out his record last year as well. And we basically, like, we all kind of moved to New York, or at least me and Joel moved to New York around the same time. I think James had been there a little bit earlier, but we've all become really close friends. And another one of our friends, Jeremy Dutton, plays drums. But James and Joel are both on Blue Note, and they were on there before me. And so they had kind of told me just about how it was on there and what it was like. I because I played on Joel's record, and me and Joel are such close friends. I had kind of sorry.
Good.
My bad.
There
Can you hear me?
Yep. You're back.
I had kind of yeah. I had an in-depth look in terms of what the process was, with the label and just recording in general.
Right.
And that helped me not only with finding the label, but also for figuring out just how the logistics of recording my first record,
Yeah.
And Jason Moran, who also was instrumental in my life.
Right.
He's also a longtime member of Blue Note. So he introduced me to Don actually while I was on tour with Jason. I was on tour with Jason in LA, and he hit up Don and he's like, "Hey man, you should hear this guy, come to the gig." And Don came through, and I met Don.
And I'm curious. So what was the conversation like? Because Don's like an old rock and roll guy who's probably closer to my age than yours. You're what, 22 years old? And
I'm 23 now. I just turned
23. Congrats. That's right. You just had your birthday. So did I. But there you go. Yeah. So how did you connect with him?
So yeah, I mean, we met in the lobby and we exchanged a few words. Wasn't much, and then me and the band went to the studio. We recorded, and I still wasn't signed. I got signed after we recorded. We recorded it. Jason sent it to Don. He said, "Hey man, you remember that dude you ran into?"
Right.
And then Don gave me a call and he was like, "Hey man, how do you feel about joining Blue Note?" And that was it.
That's all you need to say, right?
Yeah, it was really it caught me by surprise. I thought it'd be a bigger process than it was. It was just like, "Hey man, record sounds great.
Yeah,
we'd love to have you. Let's do it."
Cool.
So
now the thing about jazz, and especially the kind of music that you're playing, is the record's great, but you want to hear it live. It needs to be performed. You can tell it's coming out of the grooves like that. It's just like it's itching to be in your face. So with the situation the way it is, how are you feeling about that? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel yet?
I mean, I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel just yet.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm not necessarily I'm not too down on the idea, just because I think generally as artists, all artists are kind of functioning in the same way during this time. We thrive off of outside influence, not only playing with people, which we are missing, but also just things like a pandemic going on, things like police brutality, things like, what I mean? If you look back to, Charles Mingus, or, any of these guys, or John Coltrane, I mean? It's, artists are always kind of documentors of what's going on,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think live music will come back when it comes back, but I'm not really stressing it.
So I'm old enough to remember all the kind of the riots and things that happened in the 60s. I was up in Rochester, New York, and I remember being closed up and all that. And, all this stuff happened back then, and really nothing changed. And I'm wondering if now, do you feel like something is going to change? Is it different, do you think?
That's interesting. I think that I think change is slow. It's too early for me to tell.
Right.
Because I sometimes I am optimistic, but then also sometimes I'm pessimistic. You know what I mean?
It's amazing. That's exactly what almost everyone says that I ask that question to.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, but I do have immense belief and gratitude for the younger generation. Everyone I talk to, I think that we do possess the ideals to change the world in that way. And so I think socially, politically, musically, all of these things, I think if there's anyone to do it, it's always going to be that youngest generation.
Yeah.
To kind of take the reins. So,
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I do have hope.
I watched a documentary last night, music documentary about Laurel Canyon and the scene over in California with the, singer-songwriters of the 60s and 70s. And it was interesting because you got the feeling like there was a movement and stuff was going to happen and it was getting better, and then it didn't. And it's just like the corporate thing, the money thing took over everything, and suddenly everything else fell to the wayside. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's definitely, especially when you're dealing with stuff like politics and, that stuff is so slow moving, and it can give the illusion of change, and it's like you look back, you're like, man, we pretty much in the same spot.
Yeah. But but the good thing is, it is people like you, musicians, artists, that move things along when they do move, and thank God for that.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think music has the power to kind of have that like really large influence, that you can't ignore. So
are you thinking ahead already to the next record?
Yeah, man. To be completely honest with you, I had the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
I love it.
Written. I mean, as a band, we had a repertoire in the holster. And so I'm really right now I'm working on, there's definitely some larger ideas I have for things, collaborations. And so I'm figuring out how to incorporate that into something that can be packaged into a record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or some sort of experience in that way,
Yeah.
So
well, hopefully you'll be out on the stage somewhere playing these songs in front of real people sometime soon.
I really hope so.
And have you ever? Yeah, I assume you haven't been to New Zealand before, so you have to come down.
Man, I have.
Really?
I was there. Yeah, man, I was there with the Count Basie band 2 years ago.
Very cool. How was that?
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun, man. I love New Zealand.
I just assume because of your age, you just didn't have time to get down here yet, but that's great.
No, I feel you. Yeah, man. The only thing was, man, I took this flight from and this ties in kind of interestingly. So I took this flight from New Zealand to Australia, and it was the worst flight I'd ever been on. I mean, like, it was like one of those like World War II type planes with the like propellers on the side. Man, it was terrible. And like we dropped for like 10, 15 seconds. It was like one of them ones.
Yeah.
And I remember getting off the plane and telling myself, like, you know something, I'm fine with just recording. So it's like it seems like my wish was granted.
Yeah, well, there you go. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, well, hopefully if you ever come back, it'll be mellower this time around.
No, I'm sure it will be.
We'd love to see you. All right. Well, thank you. Good luck with the record. Thank you for taking time to talk to me. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And good luck with everything else that's going on over there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Election's coming.
Yeah. Indeed. Thanks so much, man.
You're welcome.
Fun.
Bye.